Hi, my name's Dee, your Professor of Woo Woo, and welcome once again to Sunchilde Tarot. And this time I have a very, very special guest who I'm just going to give a little bit of introduction to first. Regular viewers of my channel will know when the Devil card comes up, I bring up my Demon Possessed Tarot, which this gentleman, oh no, you're that side, aren't you? This gentleman here is Mr. Travis McHenry of Bloodstone Studios, the genius behind my Demon Possessed Tarot, my Oracle of Heaven and Hell, and my recent acquisition is the Angel Tarot from Amazon. I missed out on the original Angel-Evoking Tarot from Kickstarter. Travis, welcome to the channel.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
So what got you started with designing these? I am so fascinated to know, because anyone who's been watching the channel knows my astrology interest has gone back to the Solomonic entities, as we were talking about beforehand. But was it from a point of magical evocation that you were led to do this, or you decided to do this, or was it from the astrology point of view, or the armchair magician point of view, or the full out there in the middle of nowhere and you wand sort of point of view?
It was first of all, I didn't even know that there was an astrology connection between the entities and the demons and the angels, and some kind of astrology viewpoint out there. I had no idea that there was a connection between them when I started this. I knew the tarot had a connection to astrology, but I didn't really understand what it was at the time I started in 2018. So it was mostly from a desire to create an easy way to evoke demonic entities. That was the goal.
Yes, well, that certainly it's worked. I will say, after inadvertently having some visitors in the house after filming some of my readings sometimes. So what sort of research did you do for it then? Was it for...
Well, the original research was, my whole goal in it was to get to the oldest possible material. So I completely avoided Aleister Crowley's books, A.E. White's books, all those books from the late 1800s, early 1900s. I didn't even look at any of that stuff at first. I really wanted to start with the original grimoires from the 1400s, 1500s, and I think even a few from the 1300s, to find as much information as I could. What were scholars originally writing about these deities? And because I figured that was the authentic material, that was the most authentic version of this stuff that wouldn't be clouded by later authors wanting to make a buck or whatever they might be adding in to make it more sensational than it really was. And to be honest, the original texts are pretty sensational. So I found what I was looking for. And connecting it to the tarot, of course, Aleister Crowley and a few other authors have already done that, tried to connect the 72 demons to the tarot in some way. I found some of those associations to be somewhat artificial. They tried to say, well, this demon is connected to this degree of the zodiac, and so we're going to connect it to this particular tarot card, even though what the text said that demon does, like what its skill or ability is, has nothing to do with the tarot card that yes, someone like Crowley has connected them to. So the revolution that I had was to come in and align the 72 demons with the tarot cards based on what they actually do, what their function is. So for example, a demon who is able to find you treasure, well, you could connect that with like the 10 of Pentacles or some card like that involves money. So that was how it all got started. And then the astrology stuff came much, much later.
So which came first, the Angel Evoking or the Demon Possessed?
I actually released the Demon Possessed Tarot first. And when I was even designing it, I realized, okay, if each demon has an angel that rules over them, I'm going to need to do an angel deck as well. Why not? It's a perfect companion piece. If you want to, you can shuffle all the cards together and make a gigantic deck, which I did later then with the Oracle of Heaven and Hell. That has an angel on the card and a demon on the same card.
You've just given me an idea now what to do with my Amazon ones. I'm going to have to get one. So was there... from what you were saying, that was a lot of book research. Was there any magical processes involved in, like, did you summon any of the spirits and say, is this you or is this you?
Well, it was you before we started the interview, you talked a little bit about your housemate seeing a demon in the house. So the very first couple cards that I started working on, I would generally work on this late at night after I left my day job. And it was like 2, 3 in the morning. I had been working on the card for Andrus, the demon Andrus, who is a very violent spirit. He'll kill everybody in the room if he can. And his job is to sow bloodshed and chaos. So I'm working on this card. I'm having a hard time getting the design just right. And I finally finished it. I mean, it took me like 2, 3 hours. And I thought to myself, I feel like there's something in the room with me. So I got up and I went to bed, and I'm laying in my bedroom, and I swear to God, now this is the only time this has ever happened to me, okay? I look in the corner of the room, and there is this large black shadow that is the exact outline of, the common depiction of Andrus, which is he's sitting on the back of I think a bear or a horse or something, but he's got like the angel head, the owl head, the angel body, and he's holding a big sword. That's the sort of silhouette that I saw in darkness. And it didn't scare me, but what it told me was, hey, dude, you're on the right track. Keep doing this. So I actually felt like Andros was coming to encourage me to keep pursuing this path. And it did. And I kept pursuing it, and I completed designing the entire deck. And it has literally changed my life. I mean, really, really changed my life. When I completed the deck, to answer your question about specific evocation, yes, I have worked with this deck on a ritual basis myself since I created it, 2017. And it's Halloween 2017 was when I did the first evocation with it. I was evoking Lucifuge Rofacal, the Prime Minister of Hell. And I mean, the results speak for themselves. Okay, his job is to give worldly treasures, and my decks have sold, I think, as of this month, over $2.2 million worth in revenue.
Oh, fantastic!
So in 3 years, I would say that has been a success, and that the evocation worked. Not that I've made that much money; that's just revenue. But and other things too that came along from that one specific reading. So I always encourage people, if you're going to evoke with the demon possessed tarot, or the occult tarot as it's called now, Halloween is a fantastic time to do it. You're almost guaranteed to get what you want, but it's also a case of be careful what you wish for, because you're definitely going to get it. So make sure you're asking for something with like a pure heart, so you don't get some kind of horror. Like, don't wish for anybody to die or anything like that, because they're going to die.
Well, I started this channel on Halloween as well, 2 years after.
Nice.
So yes, it's quite a potent evening, and definitely the entities, when they will send you those signals to say, yeah, you're on the right track, keep going, because I've been having the same. It was Beleth that started me going to the tarot channel. I've never said this on the channel before, but it was Beleth that started me going to do the tarot channel, which led me to the astrology, which has led me full circle back to looking at the angels and the demons in astrology, and in the terms of a natal chart or an event chart, well, in charts. So I've got to ask first, on the back of, with the angel or angel-evoking tarot, and how I missed that coming out, I don't know. But I did forswear myself off of Kickstarter, because if you're a tarot enthusiast but don't have a huge amount of money, don't go on Kickstarter.
It's very addictive, yes. Even for me, I got myself into a habit. I was buying deck after deck, and finally I said, I've just got too many decks. I'm never going to use half of these. And so the ones that didn't actually resonate with me, like the Mermaid Cat Tarot, it's a great deck, but it's just not my thing. So I gave away a lot of those to friends.
But so did you associate the Angel Tarot, the angels, to the cards by looking which angel rules over which demon, and they've got this card, so therefore its ruling angel will have the same card? Or
no, I didn't. So
suits which card?
I didn't do that. And you know what? A lot of people would wish that I had done that, but I didn't do it for the same reason. I didn't feel bound to use, Crowley's correspondences to create the demon possessed tarot. I wanted to make a deck that was really authentic to the angels themselves. So each card represents what that angel does. And also, it just so happens that there's literature out there. I think it's mostly from the late 1800s that specifically says this angel is astrologically aligned to this, specific degree of the zodiac. Now, I did not line up the degrees of the zodiac with the cards, but I did line up what that means, like what the meaning of that degree of the zodiac is to some of the cards. So the Angel-Evoking Tarot is probably more astrologically aligned to the classic, astrology than the Demon Possessed Tarot is, but they're both, it's really what that deity does, what that spirit does that gives it the meaning of the tarot card.
Now, anyone who reads the cards knows that every deck can have a personality. And I will say that these are brimming, absolutely brimming with the, I don't know, there's almost a humor with, as well as, no, you will listen. I get a lot of you will listen, but there's a humor that seems to come through with it as well. So that got you looking, the angels got you looking at the astrology. Now, as you know, what I'm really fascinated with is looking at the relationships. Now, I did mention before about the Goetic associations with decans by day and by night, which I found on a demonology site. And I will say I've not found anything else from it whatsoever, but I've been happily talking about it during my new moon and full moon videos that I do with our resident astrologer, David Fisher. But you say that there's a more ancient association.
There is. Yes, there is. So the Egyptians actually believed what they call the horoscopus, which would be it literally translates our chart, horoscope, hour. And they did not necessarily divide it into day and night. I think there's one text that uses that phraseology, but it's from the Greek period. The Egyptians really believed that the decans, are these stars, are constantly traveling through the night sky. I mean, because they can see them every night, rising, setting, just like the sun does. But they also understood, even during the day, those stars are still active. Just like at night, the sun is still active. It's just under the horizon. You can't see it moving. So, or going through the night sky is the other view. Behind the sort of veil of Nut, the goddess of the night sky. So they believe hourly those stars are moving, and depending on when you're born, and here's another thing, depending on when you were created, the actual conception of you by your parents, what star was in the sky, either culminating in its helical rise or submerged in the duat. What that star set was at the moment you were conceived is going to determine your physical life. So, because then you're developing in the womb after that. And then when you're actually born, there's another set of stars. Okay, what hourly, like literally by the hour you were born. And this is where we get the guardian angel of your hour. So you can look at what were those three stars in those three positions. A skilled astronomer in ancient Egypt would have been able to say, your kid is going to be a doctor, your kid is going to be a lawyer or whatever. And also to say, your kid is going to die at age 18. Like that was important to know. And he's going to die of malaria, to say a very specific life path based on those two events. When the child was conceived, what was the position of the stars, and what were the position of the stars when the child was born. So it's actually more complicated than just day and night. That's a very simplified way of dealing with it. And that's what the Greeks did. It's actually hour by hour, which is interesting because that's in the literature about angels, 1,000 years later or 1,400 years later. And the European scholars said, Agrippa was, I think, the first one to write about this, was the first one to say, hey, each angel rules over a specific hour. Really, really fascinating.
So that's when you're saying about the hours there, are you talking about the planetary hours that we've come to recognize, or a different system to that?
No, it's 24 hours in the day.
So it's
literally. So
what we would look at the ascendant.
That's correct. 12 in the day, 12 at night. And whatever star is above the horizon, its helical rise, whichever one is culminating that night or that hour, and whichever one is hidden behind in the duet, all three of them exert power over you. And I found a text. Now, this has not been published in the English language. That's why it's so exciting, okay? It's called The Nous of Decades. And the author who published the information about this wrote most of it in French or German. Her native language is German. But the Nous of Decades is known. There's a fragment of it in the Louvre, but the important parts of it were submerged under the water up until I think 2008 or 7, somewhere around there. They were discovered by this underwater archaeologist, Frank Gitto, who's French. And that has solid information about all 36 of the decans and specifically what these gods do. And if you look at that information, now remember, it's been submerged underwater for the past, 3,000 years, 2,000 years. So nobody could have seen this, all right?
Yeah.
It matches some of it perfectly to the later European descriptions of what the demons do. They have foul breath. They cause death by water. Or they cause skin problems, really specific things that no author could have just made up and have it be exactly there on this one piece of stone buried in the ocean. So finding those kind of connections and taking the time to translate them myself, because now I understand what they mean, has just been really enlightening for me, absolutely enlightening. And it shows me, and this is just a theory, that the angels and the demons are all the same spirit. You can divide them down, put a 12 in front of it, divide it by 12, and you can reduce these entities down to 36 core spirits. And it's almost like, the Holy Trinity. You've got aspects of the same being, or Ra had aspects of himself, or just like the Hindu avatars have all these aspects of themselves. That's the way the angels and the demons are. They're all aspects of these core 36 decans, which are astrologically related. I mean, they're actually literally stars in the sky.
So that, very much that idea has translated into more modern magical thinking with the Shem HaMephorash and the 72 all carrying part of the name of
Right.
God. If that's not, the image that you're talking about. So
it is. No, it's almost exactly the same, because the Hebrew mystics got a hold of this information. They were in Egypt, and the Egyptians also kept invading Israel Egyptians kept invading Israel or Canaan or Khan or whatever it was over and over again. And so there was exposure to these ideas and these ideals. So the Hebrews and the mystics, they took it and made it their own. And that's why you have the Tree of Life, the 72 names of God, all that stuff. Those numbers and that information actually comes from ancient Egypt. The Hebrews took it. It was not in the reverse. And we can say that for sure because the pyramid texts and the coffin texts date to 2400 BC, 2000 BC. The earliest texts of the Hebrew Bible weren't written until 600 BC. So you've got almost 2,000 years of prior knowledge about these things that the Hebrews adopted as their own, as part of their mystical tradition. And you know what? We're still doing it today. The Europeans adopted it as their mystical tradition, and now here we are, the New Agers, adopting it as our mystical tradition. So it's fascinating, but that's where it all comes from.
It's fascinating in the terms of, because I've got two brains now. My background is with the Hocus Pocus, and that's how I encountered Beleth, because I was like, what's my next level of my magic? I really should get round to evoking something rather than just meeting something in the street, which was my old habit. And like, who do I evoke? And then the universe just went, here's Beleth, you've not met before, but you'll get on. And it went on from there. But these same entities, would you say the daimons are the same entities in another shape, or is there some philosophical difference or schism that would have happened, like Oceanus, Tethys, Dike, and weirdly Osiris?
So I can actually say, I found the texts. Again, you can line these texts up and put them by date that they were created, and you can see the transition from decan to daemon to demon. over the course of probably about 200 or 300 years, starting at about 100 BC and ending at about 200 AD. Scholars and authors, Greek, Egyptian, and then Christian afterwards, which would be Roman, taking the 36 spirits and turning them from gods of the sky to lesser gods of the sky, like daemons, to demons, i.e. evil spirits that are also celestial. And these texts are absolutely amazing. And I had to translate them from the original Latin and stuff like that, but really fascinating. It's the whole basis of Hermeticism, which of course they claim that their lineage comes from Thoth, or Tahoth, as the modern Egyptians call him. So it's really the basis of Hermeticism comes from these, this sort of 300 or 400 year period in Egyptian history. It's really fascinating.
So on that level then, if you're talking about the Hermetic tradition, what's your opinion on, in relation to all these interrelationships that we've got, the degree heads of Franz Baden?
Where? What?
Well, Franz Baden has did an evocation for each individual degree of the zodiac. And there is an entity that he has named and say he does this and he does this and he does this. And there are definitely thematic resonances across the space of a decan as you work from one entity to another. Was he the first person to do that, or is that actual specific degree? I mean, why did we ever say that? It makes sense to me. I've often wondered why 360 degrees in a circle. Why the origin of that? I've never really looked into it, but the decans make sense that the spirits come first and that's 10 degrees would come second.
Right. Okay, so it's a great question. So I'll deal with the 1 degree of the zodiac first and then go on to the 360. So the 1 degree of the zodiac was, that idea sort of started, I think, with Gnosticism, early Gnostic Christian thought.
Yeah.
They had this concept that there were like primordial spirits, kind of called the archons or something like that. Right. And there were 365 of those. And each one theoretically would represent 1 degree of the zodiac. Now, I have not dived into that probably as much as I will at some point, but I think that that's where Baden got it, because his tradition is really grounded in mysticism and Gnostic Christian thought. So I'm pretty sure that he was maybe the first to sit down and evoke them, but he wasn't the one to originally come up with that. That's right. from Gnostic thought in, I don't know, maybe 200, 300 AD, somewhere back then. So to answer your other question, where did 360 degrees come from? Now, I get this question a lot. I have tried to answer it as honestly and truthfully as I can. I honestly believe, just mathematically, there's 360 degrees in a circle. And if you stand out on an open plane and look around you, you're in a circle. There's a circle of the night sky, 360 degrees of the night sky. The Egyptians took that and divided it into 10 degrees to make their calendar. The Egyptian calendar started around 3000 BC, really the start of the Egyptian civilization. And so it predates pyramid texts, all that stuff. And what it did was divided the year into 36 weeks of 10 days each. And that's where the word decan comes from. It's actually a Greek word. It's not even Egyptian. D-E-C, meaning 10, and meaning, I don't know, day or something. So the decan comes, that word comes from those 10-day divisions. So even that 360 degree concept comes from the Egyptian calendar. There's absolutely no doubt that that's where it comes from. How they developed the specific number 360 degrees, I think it's just a mathematical thing that relates to the circle. You stand and you turn yourself in 360 degree circle. You can do the math and figure out that it's 360 degrees. So I think that that's where it comes from. And 10 was just a convenient division. And by the way, it's wrong. Just to clarify, it's not right. You need an extra 5 days and then an extra leap day every 4 years to make it accurate. So the original calendar was incorrect. The Egyptians realized that. They added the 5 extra days, the days of gap. I call them gap days. And then they still didn't know what a leap year was. So the calendar was never 100% accurate. It was a floating calendar.
Yeah, there's some festival of life or something on the 5 days, wasn't there?
Yeah. So the 5 days, each one was devoted, because each week had its own deity, one of the decans. The 5 days then each were devoted to a specific god, like it was the birthday of Isis or the birthday of Set or the birthday of Osiris. That's how we translate the name of those festivals. So yeah, it would have been the day that god came to life.
Yeah. So what, I mean, I know you obviously from the tarot side of things, but the way that you're talking, it almost seems like you, like me, have been pulled into the astrology side of things as well, and magical background. Where would you say you're sitting at the moment? Is it all of it, or are you focusing on one specific aspect at the moment?
It's all of it. It has to be. And actually, I'm developing theories about our connection as human beings with the stars themselves. So some of the decanal stars we can name with 100% certainty. The goddess Sopdet, or as the Greeks called her, Sothis, is directly connected to the star Sirius. We know that for sure. The god Sa, who comes before her in the decanal list, is directly connected to Orion or the constellation Orion. And there's a couple others. The decan called the Thousands is the translation. The Egyptian name is Kau. That is directly connected to the Pleiades. So the Egyptians recognize that as these stars come into the sky, they're having an effect on us on Earth. That was their belief. It's actually a slightly different philosophy than the Persians came up with, which was as the stars pass through the sun or the sun passes through the stars, that's telling me what is happening on Earth. The Egyptians believed it was the stars themselves, because they believed they were gods, causing these events to happen as they came into prominence or started to rise in the sky. So in thinking about that, it almost calls to mind the concept of worshiping celestial spirits, like the god of the spirit of the sun, the spirit of Mercury, and all these different celestial spirits that came around in really the early 1400s, 1500s, and are still worshipped today. The Golden Dawn has all these rituals for calling upon these celestial spirits. And it's very, very similar to that. I feel like they are derived from this original Egyptian practice. And in doing more research, I mean, if you think about it, like a lot of people believe that our solar system, our planet revolves around the sun, but our sun and our solar system are actually revolving around the star Sirius. It's like some kind of a dual system. And then inside of our universe or galaxy, the star Sirius is revolving around something else, and everything's revolving around the universal center. So if that's true, it's so fascinating that not just the Egyptians, but all these other ancient cultures latched on to Sirius as this important center of life and center of things that are happening on planet Earth. Why would they do that? It's just a tiny star in the sky. Because they recognize somehow, whether it's divine intervention or just a mathematical probability that they came up with, and determined that we're all revolving around Sirius.
Yeah, because the most famous story, well, I say the most famous, that's probably showing how much I was educated by the internet, but would be the Dogon tribe and
Yeah.
their knowledge of Sirius long before we had the telescopes or the maths to
That's right. To know that there's more, it's a binary system. And actually it's a triary system, whatever you would call that. It's actually 3 stars, but they recognized that. They were able to see that somehow.
So what projects are you working on at the moment?
So right now I am working on the Egyptian Star Oracle. It is an Oracle deck using original tomb art. I actually went to Egypt, went down in the tombs and collected art. Just took pictures of it with it on my phone, and came back, cleaned it up, put it on these cards. And it's a ritual deck. It's an astrological deck because it deals directly with the stars. It's also a ritual deck because you can evoke, there are spells in the pyramid text and the coffin text to evoke these entities, these daemons, if you will call them that, these decans, these gods of the stars. So the pyramid texts, I've actually put them, just like I did with my other two evoking decks, I put the evocation spells right on the card. So as you're working with these cards, you can also be evoking these spirits for their positive, these celestial spirits, for their positive impact that they can have on your life.
That sounds fantastic. Sign me up for as soon as
it's extremely exciting. It's very, very exciting.
What was it like going over there? And when you say collect artwork, you've got to hastily backpedal and rephrase it. But what was it like?
It was really an amazing experience. It was also an extremely stressful experience. So one really good thing about going during COVID was there were not a whole lot of people there. So I really had the run. I took a research assistant with me, my friend Damien, and the two of us really had the run of these places to ourselves. I hired a local guide and a local driver to take me around to all these different locations. So it was really just me and Damien, and then the guide occasionally giving some information when needed. But I was able to get into all these tombs and places that Westerners are generally not invited to go to. Yeah. And once somehow the Egyptian government found out who I was, that I was a published author and all this other stuff. And they not only gave me a bodyguard for the remainder of my trip, I had a personal bodyguard carrying a submachine gun under his suit jacket everywhere I went. And also I had the complete cooperation of the Department of Antiquities in the region of Asut. There's a place called the Mir Monumental Tombs. These are Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom, First Intermediate Period tombs that really have not been published. What's in them has not really been published broadly in the Western Western society or in English language at all. So I was able to go into these places one by one, examine them, take pictures of the tomb walls, and this is the birthplace of astrology. This is where the coffins were that had those decans written on them for the first time in human history. It's the source of everything. It's where all this stuff started. And it answered so many questions. Imagine having in the back of my mind the name of a decan. There's a decan called the one under the hind part of the cow. What the hell does that mean? Why would they name a decan that? That doesn't sound like a very flattering name for a god. And then I go into one of these tombs of an Egyptian noble, and I see on the wall a depiction of a cow, and there's a man kneeling under the cow, catching the calf as it's giving birth. Voila, the one under the hind part of the cow. It's a new life, a new beginning. That's what that decan stands for. And if you look at the week in the Egyptian calendar that decan would have its helical rise, it has new beginnings and rebirth and things like that. And the Hathor festival, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Okay, it's all connected. It's right there. We just didn't have a way to figure out what all those things meant. You have to physically go there and understand, put yourself in the mindset of the Egyptians when they were, working with these decans themselves. So lots of times I was, hunkered down, like literally like this, trying to get through these narrow tunnels in these tombs and in the pyramids. Almost all the pyramids I went into, the pyramid of Titi was one of the worst in Saqqara. You've literally, it's like a 3 foot, I'm 6'2". My friend that I took with me is 6'3". So and it's like a 3 foot tall opening to get down. And it's a straight, 45-degree angle down into the earth. You've got to try and hunker down to get in there and then do the same thing to get back up, drenched in sweat because it's like 102 degrees out. But I wouldn't trade that experience for it. You get down there and there's the pyramid texts carved on the wall. The oldest religious text that humanity has created, 2,400 BC, almost 5,000 years old, right there on the wall. And it looks like it was carved today. That's how fresh it looks. So to be able to have those experiences, and because nobody else was there, basically by ourselves, we were able to do some things that maybe normal people don't get to do, like get inside the sarcophagus of Pharaoh Titi and actually lay in there, you know, with my arms crossed and just have a moment. What would it have felt like to be the body of the Pharaoh in this exact spot 5,000 years ago? You know, that's not an experience the average person gets to have. And when I was in the tomb of King Tut, I was the only person down there for like 30 minutes, just by myself. So the guy that sort of watches the tomb let me go down into where the sarcophagus is and get a better look at the other side of the sarcophagus, and make some really interesting little discoveries. I mean, King Tut wasn't that great of a pharaoh. He's famous because we found all of his treasures, but and seeing his mummy down there, they returned King Tut's mummy to his actual tomb. But that was the day I got really sick. I got deathly ill after I went down to King Tut's tomb. So I was sick for the whole rest of the trip, but I had to push myself to, and I had a fever and everything else. I had to push myself to keep up the pace that I had set for the trip. So it was really enlightening. It was an amazing experience, worth every penny I spent. It was very expensive. And you got to bribe people along the way and tip them, they say, but it's bribing along the way. And of course I brought back 2 suitcases worth of souvenirs and things like that for friends and family, and also for myself. It was everything I wanted it to be. You know, it was just like Indiana Jones when he's exhausted in Raiders of the Lost Ark, and Karen Allen is trying to make out with him and he passes out. That's the way I was. When I got back from that trip, I didn't get out of bed for 2 days, and I slept for about a week straight. It was pretty incredible.
I'm not surprised. That sounds absolutely phenomenal. So after all this beautiful experience that you've gone through, and you've come back and you're collating stuff, when can we expect this oracle of what, name it again?
The Egyptian Star Oracle. So that is going to be released. The Kickstarter launch is November 3rd, which is the culmination of the star Sirius. It's Sopdet's culmination, when she will be in her absolute highest power. So that's the date that I'm launching it on Kickstarter. And the link is already up. If you go to bloodstone.info, that's my website. I put a banner at the top so you can follow the Kickstarter project if you want to.
Right, and you've shown me just how much I still have to learn about so many things. There's, thank you so much for coming on here today, Travis.
You're welcome.
There will be a link to Bloodstone Studios, and if the Kickstarter link is there, it will be down in the description as well when we finish. And you've heard me wax lyrical about the power of these particular tarot. The Angel Tarot one, because I missed the actual Kickstarter, like I say, I must have been going, no more Kickstarter for me for a while. These have just arrived in that. It was so crazy because someone was saying it would make life easier on my new moon and full moon videos if I could show pictures of the angels. I was like, oh God, the editing involved in that. I need cards with them on. And
Yep.
you were my
try and make your life easier.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you so much, Travis.
Everybody does that. It's okay.
It's been a long day. I know it's early in the morning where you are, but it's a long day after a day at work here. Thank you so much, Travis, for coming on. And as I say, all the links will be below, and we will see you later.